Want to know if you have an exercise addiction? Watch this.
Our next caller is Allison from Colorado.
Allison, how's it going? How can we help you?
Doing well. How are you guys today?
Excellent.
We're doing pretty good. Thank Justin just really
I feel very relieved right now. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
All right. So guys, I first have to tell you that I am so grateful to have found you guys.
Thank you.
And you'll understand why when I give you a little bit of background. I have a few questions, but definitely have to fill in some pieces beforehand. So the very first time I heard your podcast was, I want to say, a month and a half ago, when the first podcast where you introduced map symmetry. And it's the missing piece to my puzzle that I've been waiting for so long. And it fills me with so much gratitude and joy, because it's been a struggle bus for a while. I was always an athlete growing up, soccer, volleyball. So I wrote a book, and I'm basically going to summarize my book to give you guys the foundation to help answer my questions. And my book talks about like drugs, alcohol, addiction. I stopped being an athlete. And when I started being an athlete in my early, so when I continued to be an athlete again, it was in my late teens and early 20s. And I became a runner, and I lost weight, and I stopped drinking, drugs, doing all that. And I got into running, and it was very healthy when I first started, and it was fine, and it was great. And then I live out here in Colorado, started mountain climbing, got into that, and it was in a healthy place. And then I have this addictive personality and started really getting into my mountain climbing and my ultra running. And I eventually have a mountain climbing accident where I fall 10 years ago, and I break my femur. And the accident I should have died. I shouldn't have made it through it, but I did, and that was super awesome. And I break my femur. I get physical therapy. I get a titanium plate with a bunch of screws in my leg. And 5 months after breaking my femur, I'm running a 50-miler. 6 months after breaking my femur, I'm running my first 100-mile race. And I do PT enough to get to where I'm doing what I love. And so for the past decade, things were fine. I've ran 2,100-mile races, and I was pretty good. I've been pretty good. I'm winning a bunch of these. I set a lot of mountain climbing records in Colorado, and have climbed thousands of mountains. And but I tuned out from my body, and I didn't really know what good or bad pain was anymore, especially after having such a hardcore accident. So I didn't understand. I just thought like how my left hip was like, didn't work the same anymore. I just thought that was kind of what my life trajectory was going to be because of my accident. And I never continued getting physical therapy or doing any of that. And then it started about 2 years ago, and things just started falling apart. Started with plantar fasciitis, and then it went into back spasms and leg spasms, and going to this physical therapist, that physical therapist, doing more modalities, acupuncture, ralphing, gua sha, just cryo spa. I've done PRP and so many things, and MRIs, and nothing. Like when I broke my femur, I knew how to rehab from it, but this, I didn't know what was wrong or how to fix it. And I can honestly say the past 2 years have been such a struggle bus, but I wouldn't change them for anything, because it's led me to be one of the best people, not just athletes, that I've ever been in my life, and how to be mindful about things. And I finally found the right PT, and we've been doing just great stuff and building my body back. And basically my body fell apart because for 10 years I was imbalanced, and I was compensating, and my right leg's done all this work, and it's worked for a long time until it didn't work anymore. And my body just was like, I'm done. I need you to get me rebalanced. But I totally didn't understand this. And I've had so many strength coaches that just didn't put the right programming together or had no idea. And then you guys do, I hear I'm finally at this place where I got back to running. I had to take a year off from all the crazy stuff. And then once I got back, it's way more mindful, and I'm doing so much less running, and I'm doing way more mobility and more strength. And I'm setting PRs in the 100 and the 50K and the 50 miler, and I'm running way less. And it's been incredible, but I still have some stuff, and I've been at this plateau. And then I hear your podcast, Map Symmetry, and I am on phase 2, week 2, and it's like, it brings me so much joy doing it, because there's no better programming there's so many people out there that I'm sure have had injuries and broken things and can relate to exactly what I'm saying. And so I feel so blessed. And that's kind of the background where I'm at with, where I am. And I want to ask you guys a few questions. The first one being, as an ultra endurance athlete, and kind of my story you just heard, what kind of recommendations for programs to use after Symmetry and during my buildups for like 100-mile race would you have me do after I complete Symmetry for the first time? Or would you have me do Symmetry, like do it again?
Run it again.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you two answers, Allison.
Or stop running.
And either one's okay. One's better than the other. Okay. So before you started your endurance sports, you had some addiction issues with alcohol and drugs, correct?
Totally.
Okay. Have you ever heard somebody say have you ever heard the saying that you can turn anything into a drug?
Yes.
Yeah. So endurance sports is your drug. So
absolutely.
So one answer I'm going to give you is to not do those sports for a long time. You're going to have to go. It's like an alcoholic saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to drink a couple beers every night instead of coming off completely and working through that. So that's one answer. Now, that might not be the answer you want to hear. It might not be possible for you. So here's the second answer. I think you should run Map Symmetry over and over and over again for at least a couple years, because you're looking at 10 years of this intense type of training. You've created some serious imbalances. It's going to take a year or two to undo some of that work. And what you're seeing now is just the beginning. I mean, you just started Map Symmetry. You're noticing a difference. You're feeling it now. Just wait till a year or two from now. So my second piece of advice is this. Do Map Symmetry over and over again for a year, and then go back to your endurance sport. Now the first one is I wouldn't go back to endurance sports for longer. I would wait much longer until you feel like you're free from that addiction, because I've seen lots of, I dealt with this myself. I still deal with it when it comes to exercise. It's like any drug. It's very hard to have a little bit, right? It very slowly creeps up and turns back into a problem. So you're going to have to break that for a while. But otherwise, I would go a year. I would go a year, Map Symmetry. When you're done with it, start over again. When you're done with it, start over. I think you can run Map Symmetry maybe 3 times in a year, and then go back to doing some endurance sports and ease your way in, and try to stay aware of your tendency to overdo it. Really try and stay aware of that, because that'll creep up on you, and then you'll run into similar problems that you're dealing with now.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, Allison, I know you haven't listened very long, so we have a webinar that I did for free. It's called Maps Prime Pro or Prime Pro.
Prime Pro
webinar. Prime Pro. I don't even know my own webinar. PrimeProWebinar.com. It's free, and it's like a 50-minute class that I take you through from literally from head to toe. And it's all of our mobility work, and it's specifically movements that are from our Prime Pro program. Go through that. I think that would be great for you. I think that would be something that you should try and incorporate at least once or twice a week into your routine. I think that'll help out. I think that'll help a lot with your pain and trying to balance your body out. And then I agree with Sal. I think Symmetry is the place to stay for probably a while, or maybe even indefinitely, at least until you decide to start to slowly reduce at one point in your life. I mean, if you don't know this already, you're going to have to cut back on ultra marathon running. I mean, at one point in your life, your body is eventually going to tell you, this is not the healthiest thing that we can be doing for it. And it's probably already starting to tell you that. And I think you know that.
And don't confuse ultra marathons with running. You can run and stay healthy for the rest of your life. An ultra marathon is it's like competing in powerlifting or competing in bodybuilding. It's just an extreme athletic endeavor, and it's just, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not ideal. It's not a healthy ideal long term. That's all. That's what I meant by that, right? So I absolutely think that if you have a love for running, you can keep that passion and you can do it in a very healthy way. I think ultra marathon running is the extreme version of that, which it's a sport at that point, right? It's not something healthy for your body, and that goes for any sport. And I know people that are athletes and they love their sport. They never like to hear me say that, but it's the truth. No sport where you do a repetitive movement for hours on hours on hours and years on years and years is healthy and good for the body. It's just not. We weren't intended to move like that. So we were, though, intended to go for long treks. So, walking and hiking and being outdoorsy and doing those things, I think that's an awesome endeavor for you to continue on. But if you know that you have these addictive behaviors where a little turns into a little more, turns into a lot, turns into excessive relatively quick, then, I think that the self-awareness there is that I need to start working on that and peeling back. Map Symmetry is the program for you. And my recommendation would be to start working away from the ultra marathons and to a more balanced approach.
Yeah, totally have done what you're saying. I took a year off, which I'd never done in my life, and the recommendations are totally on point. I mean, we're talking about doing 120 miles of running a week, and now I do 50 miles a week, and the extra time that I used to run, I bike or I do yoga or now Map Symmetry, and it's improved my running profoundly.
Yeah, you're still doing a lot. Yeah. 50 miles plus yoga plus Map Symmetry is still a lot. I know it's hard. Yeah. It's hard for you to hear.
It's the right direction, though.
You're moving in the right direction.
You're trending correctly.
And
your body is, by the way, it's telling you you're going the right direction. Yeah. Imagine if you went a little bit further that direction.
Yeah.
It's telling you right now you're starting to treat me a little bit better. You're starting to head in the
listening to that. Your body's telling you a lot.
Yeah.
And so if you the benefits that you see from that now, you can really maximize that. I think we're just trying to sort of reprogram that in your mind to get in that direction.
Yeah. What kind of yoga are you doing?
A yoga app that I like to do after my runs. It's called Yoga on the Go, and it's about 15 minutes of just different programs that I do post run.
Check out that
really
webinar.
Enjoyed.
That webinar could potentially replace
that. Could replace stuff. And then, have you ever done Yin yoga?
I have not.
I like Yin yoga for someone like you. It's very meditative. And then, do you do any meditation?
That's been the biggest game changer of my whole self.
Wonderful. Yeah, that would really, meditation and Yin yoga would be something
You're heading the right direction, Allison. I just want to so we don't come off like we're beating you up for what you're doing. I think you're
totally
you're heading the right direction, and I'm proud of where you've already come. So you've already come a long ways, and I think you know what your body is telling you. It's responding to that, but I think you can come further. So keep heading this way. Try out that webinar. Keep following Symmetry, and then stay in touch with us, huh?
Yeah. Time for another question?
Sure. Go for it.
Okay. Can you guys tell me if you know anything about scar tissue and the most effective ways to break it up?
Yeah. So I would say that's not our expertise. However, breaking up scar tissue is largely a myth. It's a very tough, fibrous tissue. What people often confuse for scar tissue is just tight muscles. So muscles can be tight. You can develop knots in muscles from the central nervous system telling certain areas or parts of the body to be tight. And pressing on those and working those out with pressure does work. But actual real scar tissue, the amount of pressure required to break up scar tissue would damage your body severely.
Is it around your knees, hips, or ankles?
That's the thing. It's protecting you. It's like a protective response.
So my scar tissue, I get hardcore massage therapy in it, and I've actually saw it through ultrasound when I've gotten PRP, which is platelet-rich plasma injections into it. And so it's, imagine like this huge brick or stick of butter that's like right under it's where my hamstring is. And it's made the muscles in that leg really messed up. And for a while it was compressing on my SI joint and limiting a lot of the tendons and muscles that I could use. And so we've done some really good work with it, but we still can see it through ultrasound, just this massive lump of crap. And I'm not sure if there's anything else I can do.
Well, I mean, and I'm sure you don't want to hear us to continue to beat this drum, but you got this probably from running these ultra marathons. And so you working on it with a therapist and then going right back out to 50 miles a week, it's talk about an uphill battle. I mean, again, more signs your body is telling you that slow down and take care of me.
But there's actual scar tissue and then there's tightness. So actual scar tissue, like breaking it up would be like you would have to. It would be the kind of pressure that could potentially break bones and damage the body.
Yeah,
from what I understand.
Yeah,
but again, that's not my expertise. Right. So but that's from what I understand.
But the point to take away is where it came from and why it came here.
Yes,
and that continuing to do what you're doing, and that's just, you have identified that in an area in your body. I'm assuming the reason why I asked about the hips, knees, and ankles is those are the other areas where, my runners have a lot of problem. And It's like, and then they're always trying to ask me like, all these like, can I floss? And what if I do this grafting? Can I do that? And they're looking for all these techniques to put Band-Aids on. It's like, well, what would really fix it is us stopping running and focusing on mobility and strength training. Like that's what's
it's like you're banging your head against the wall and you're like, what's the best helmet?
Yeah.
Or
medicine, or medicine to take. When it's like, stop banging your head.
Okay. That makes sense. Last question.
Okay.
There's an area that I have that's really been the most chronic irritation, and it's changing and it's getting better. And one of the best things, but it's still there. And the dumpy squat, I think I said that right.
You got it.
Dumpy squat.
Oh man, that's just like that. When I started doing that, I was like, this is what it's been waiting for. I mean, it's like the isometric hold with the deep rotators have been it's been just huge, but I don't have that with phase 2 or phase 3. Like, is that something that I can do just every day in the morning?
That's your primer right there.
Yeah. You can do that every day.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, because it's not damaging.
Okay.
Yeah,
and by the way,
just activating.
This is something that when you've listened to us long enough, you will have heard us say this. Like when we write our programs, we encourage. This part of the motivation behind when we originally started the podcast was to help people kind of modify it more, because nothing will ever surpass, me coaching you one-on-one. Because if I'm coaching you one-on-one, we're having this dialogue every day, and I can modify and you can give me feedback like, oh my God, Adam, that dumpy squat, when I do it, just unlocks everything and I feel so good. Even if I had potentially not planned to program that every week, it has now become a staple because of that feedback. So we definitely encourage clients as they go through the programs and they start to learn about their body, that they start to include those things. And that's a classic example of where we would absolutely keep that as a primer for you every day.
All right, Allison. Well, thanks for calling in. We appreciate you listening to the show and calling in.
She's frozen.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good time.
Oh, that's okay. She's done. Good deal. I remember this maybe a year or two into my training career. At this point, I was a fitness manager, but I did train a couple clients. And I remember I had this one client who was going to quit smoking, and she decided, I'm going to exercise every time I have a craving to smoke a cigarette. Well, anyway, it turned into an addiction with exercise. It became a problem. She started overtraining as a result. And that was the first time I realized, and I was a kid, I was only 18 when I was first a trainer. I remember realizing she just moved from one addiction to another. And we had this conversation about it, and then she did work on that. So, and that's what she's experiencing.
Bro, this is super common.
Very common.
This is super common. A lot of people do exactly that. And why it's tough to see is because we connect it to health.
Yeah.
Exercise and restricting of food.
Yeah,
and
addicted to running is better than addicted to crack.
I mean, and so it's really hard for them to see that. It's really even hard for a professional to tell them, hey, you're doing a bad job or you shouldn't be doing that. So this is really common. Really, really common. I mean, most people that have the discipline to get after it for that, there's normally something else going on.
Sure.
And they almost have always traded some other addiction for that addiction.
Totally.
And you know, and kudos for going that route instead of crack or something fucking terrible, right? That could end up leading to death, but it still ends up beating up on the body. And, you know, everything that she's saying, like, right, there's that long old question and like all the things, it's all pointing to the same thing. It's like, fucking stop running.
Well, she's been scaling down, right? Which is great. That's being able to identify that and start seeing benefits. We're just like, we're trying to nudge her further and further to keep going in that direction, not, you know, experience that for that moment and then go right back to the thing that brought you there.
And truth be told, we're doing this on a show, so we're being very, you know, blunt and here's your
we
answer.
only have so much time.
But the truth is, if I was training her, this for me,
this is a daily conversation
and
for
it would
a
be
year.
slow.
Exactly.
Yeah, it would be a slow, because to tell someone who's addicted to exercise, stop doing it. You know, it's like ain't gonna happen. You know?
Not only is it not gonna happen, you can even tell by the follow-up questions.
Yeah.
The follow-up questions are still the same answer.
Yeah.
The answer to this is still quit the fucking running or go the other direction. Keep going the other direction, because all these other things, you're still looking at trying to put Band-Aids down so you can get out there and run.
Right.
I mean, so this is not like, and I hope Allison listens to this part and maybe it really resonates and maybe she really starts to head this direction. But when someone is still at this place where they think they know, like, oh, I know I need to do this, but then they're still asking questions like that, like because it's like just like you use the example of the alcoholic or the drug.
It's obvious for everybody else.
It's like, it's not, hey, I'm not going to drink, but it's cool. I'm going to go hang out at the bar with my friends every day, right? Like, that's not a big deal.
I'm going to go be a bartender.
Or they keep flirting with what they know is probably
It's hard to break that final line, and it's a long process.
Yeah,
So
and you're right. As a trainer,
oh, this would be a slow. I would identify it and be like, okay, this is what we're going to work on, and I'm going to take it slow and easy
little by little,
because otherwise I'll scare her and she'll run the opposite direction.
Right, little by little.